In this video, we are going to look at how we calculate the analysis of variance, or the Anova, which is also called the F ratio. While a t-test compares the means of two different groups, the analysis of variance, or Anova, allow us to compare the means of three or more groups. So, like a t-test, our independent variable is typically categorical. Our dependent variable, again like the t-test, will be continuous or interval ratio. So we are going to use the preset Spss data set called employee data. And you'll see that we have three categories of job categories, which, to give you a sense of what that is, we have clerical workers, custodial workers, and managers. And we are going to compare these three groups in terms of their number of years previous experience. So in order to do this, we'll go to Analyze, Compare Means, and you'll see at the very bottom the one-way Anova. Our factor is what we call the independent variable. So that's going to be job category. Our dependent variable, we can put as many dependent variables as we would like. We are going to put in previous year's experience. Now we have a few different options here. So first, I'd like to call your attention to the general options and click on Descriptives. This will allow us to get the basic descriptive information, such as the mean and the standard deviation for the dependent variable within each category group. I would also like to call your attention to Posthoc. These are all secondary tests that we can do. As I mentioned before, the Anova compares the difference in means between three or more different groups. It's considered a summary statistic in that if you reject the null in an Anova test, you're simply saying that the three groups are not all the same. So statistical significance in an Anova doesn't tell you where the specific difference is. It only tells you that the groups are not all the same. So we often do what's called a post hoc test to get a better sense of where the actual difference is within the groups. So a traditional one to do for Anova that is robust enough to represent similar to the independent t-test is the Chef test. So we're going to click on that, hit continue, and hit OK. So again, we always start off with the descriptives. We have 363 clerical workers, 27 custodial workers, and 84 managers. The mean of previous month's experience for clerical workers is 85 months, for custodial workers 298 months, and managers 77.6 months. And so you can see custodial workers clearly have a much higher number of previous months experience compared to clerical and managers. Clerical is the next highest, with managers having the fewest number of months. You can also see that the custodial workers have a higher standard deviation, and here it actually gives you the range, the minimum and maximum. So for custodial workers, the minimum number of months being 144, with the most number of months being 460, which is kind of interesting in itself that no one was less than 144 months of previous experience. The clerical workers ranging from 0 to 476 months, with the managers ranging from 0 to 285. Now, if we go down to the Anova itself, you'll see that it looks at sum of square, degree of freedom, mean square, F ratio, which is what you call the ANOVA and significance. The reason why it's called an F ratio is the ANOVA calculation is a ratio of the difference between the groups divided by the difference within. Specifically, the difference between the groups are the difference in the means between those three groups, similar in concept to a t-test being the difference between the groups. The difference within each group really represents the standard error of the three groups. It's the error adjustment that's on the denominator of an F ratio. So it helps adjust that difference that you see between the groups by understanding how much noise there is in the entire sample. And so the F ratio is actually a fraction of the mean square between and the mean square within. In this case, we get the 69.12, which is statistically significant at way less than a 0.01 or 0.05 level. So once again, that means this is a summary statistic. So that just means that the means of these three groups are not all the same, but it doesn't really tell us if the difference is between the clerical and custodial, clerical and managerial, custodial and managerial. So for that, we're going to look at the post-hoc Sheff test. So in the post-hoc Sheff test, you'll see that it looks at the comparison. Each of the dyad comparisons gets its own mean difference, which is similar to the numerator of the t-test, and standard error, which is similar to the denominator of the t-test, and it gives you a significance or a p-value. So the difference between clerical and custodial, you get a difference of negative 213 months, and this is highly statistically significant. However, between the clerical and the manager, the difference is only on average 7 months, and so that is not statistically significant. If we look at the difference between the custodial workers and the managers, the difference on average is 220 months, and that also is statistically significant. You'll see that there's it's repeated just for that balance. So clerical to manager is 7.420, manager to clerical is just negative 7.420. So some of the information is repeated. So that tells us that while the custodial workers are significantly different from the clerical workers and the managers in the number of months of previous experience, clerical workers and managers are not statistically significantly different from each other. So next we'll look at the relationship between job category and the number of years at school, which is in this column. So again, we will do an ANOVA, analyze, compare means, one-way ANOVA. We can move previous experience over and move educational level in years as the dependent variable. We still want the descriptives under options, and post-hoc we will stick with Sheff. So hit OK. And so now we see that clerical workers have an average number of 12.87 years, which on average would be 1 year above college. If you look at the confidence interval, it suggests the majority of those who are clerical workers are between about completing maybe their first year of college and their second year of college. Custodial workers, their average number of years of school is 10th grade, with a range of 8th grade to a little past college, with the confidence interval showing you that the majority of the custodial workers were within 9th grade to 11th grade. Managers, 17 years. So if you assume 12 years for high school, then that's an added 5. So that's on average actually at least 1 year of post-baccalaureate or graduate school, with the bulk of those in the managerial position having some graduate school. The minimum in the range for managers is a high school degree, the maximum of having quite a high level. I'm not sure what 21 would stand for in years of school. That sounds like a lot of school. That could easily just be one person. So if we look at the ANOVA, we see that it is statistically significant, which again is interpreted as the average years of school is different when comparing clerical workers, custodial workers, and managers. That p-value, that significance level, does not tell us where the difference is. So if we go down to our post hoc test, what we see straight down the line is that they're all different from each other, that there's a statistically significant difference between clerical workers and custodial workers. There's a statistically significant difference between clerical workers and managers, and there's a statistically significant difference between custodial workers and managers. And that is Anova.